Eagles Entertainment.
With the 15th pick in the NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select.
You're listening to the Journey to the Draft podcast.
Welcome to the Journey to the Draft podcast, presented by Life Brand. I'm your host, Fran Duffy, and we've got our full offensive line preview locked and loaded here for today's show. The new league year in the NFL is just around the corner. Things will be official in free agency just a couple of days, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. But here today, we're going to be breaking down the offensive line. That means tackles, guards, centers, myself, Dane, Brugler, Ben Fennell. We're going to do it here in Draft Buzz. We're going to go through all the different superlatives, all the different categories at each of those positions. Who are the different players that stand out at each area of the draft? We're going to cover that with those two guys there in that segment. Then we're going to transition on the clock, where we've got the new version, once again, here of this segment, where we're going to pick some random players at different parts of the draft for the New York Giants, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Minnesota Vikings. So if you're a fan of any of those three teams, you definitely want to make sure you're listening to that part of the show. But also, if you just like the team building process, again, the point of that segment is all about kind of highlighting the different ways, the different thought processes that teams go through as they're stacking the board and really trying to prioritize which players they want to focus on when they get to draft weekend. Then we've got a few really good questions from you guys back at home at the back of the show there, draft mailbag, including an Eagles-only mock draft. We'll get to that at the very end, but a couple of really good questions there on the back end of this episode. As always, the best way to support this show is to go into Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify, wherever you listen. Leave us a rating, leave us a comment. If you've got a question, we will answer it. If you've got a mock draft or player rankings, anything you want us to break down, we will get to it. You guys have done an outstanding job in the last couple of weeks of really kind of going on there and just throwing us your support with a rating and a question. We will then answer that question in an upcoming episode. That said, let's get to the top of the show. Excited to break down some offensive linemen here this week with Ben Fennell and Dane Brugler for Draft Buzz.
Now it's time for Draft Buzz.
All right, well, excited to welcome in Dane Brugler and Ben Fennell as we get ready to preview this offensive line class. And guys, as we get into it, we're going to really just kind of group in all the offensive linemen together. And you guys know how I roll. I like to kind of look back over the last 10 years and really just kind of take stock of how many of these guys are getting drafted every single season. What does that look like? What are the trends at every single spot? I think if you break these guys down into like tackle guard combos and then more pure interior offensive linemen, the guard centers, it's about 27 of the exterior guys, the tackle guards, and about 15 guard centers. So overall, about 42 offensive linemen. It was a little bit higher the last couple of years. Teams are always looking to try and find extra ways to be able to protect the quarterback. But the only number that's higher on average in the first round than tackle is pass rush, right? So it just kind of speaks to the importance that teams place on the position. But Dane, I'm excited to talk about this offensive line group, which obviously there's a lot of blue chip talent, but I think the depth throughout is pretty fun as well.
I think that's a very fair statement. And this is a draft where, we've obviously hit on quite a bit the lack of quote unquote elite talent at the top. And that's why I had 4 tackles being drafted in my first 7 picks of my last mock draft. Like, it's just teams are going to revert to high, premium positions with guys that have talent. And the tackle class, they've got quite a few of those guys early, but I don't think it stops there. There's guys on day 2 we're going to talk about, day 3. And I love the interior class. I don't think the center class gets nearly enough attention. So, yeah, this is an offensive line class with plenty of future starters that NFL teams have their eyes on.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a really fun group. And we'll start just kind of looking at combo skill set. So a blend of both run blocking and pass protection. We'll just kind of go day by day here in the draft. I'll always take day 1. Dane, you'll take day 2. Ben, you will take day 3. And I'll start with a guy that a lot of people feel could be the number 1 pick in April's draft. And that's Evan Neal from Alabama. I think when you look at his overall skill set, what he can bring to the table at 6'7.5", 337 pounds, he's got outstanding size. He was Bruce Feldman's number 1 freak last year on the freak list. So that kind of speaks to his athleticism, the tools that he's got at his disposal. He's got unique feet for a guy that big. I think his athleticism and also his finishing demeanor. I mean, the way that he wants to always looking for work, both in the run game and the pass game. Proven versatility. He started 3 different positions, 3 different seasons there for the Alabama Crimson Tide. So again, when you're talking about size, athleticism, competitiveness, versatility, that's a pretty good starting core base of traits to work with for an offensive lineman. It's one of the reasons why Evan Neal is considered to be potentially the number 1 player in this draft. So, Dane, I'll come to you next for day 2. Who's a guy that kind of stands out with his blend of both run blocking and pass protection?
I'm going to go with Luke Fortner here, who, I don't know that he maybe is the first name that would come to mind for this. But the guy who has guard center experience, bull rushers, but he also has movement skills. I love how he keeps his hands engaged. He's a very alert player, so you don't see him surprised very often. Doesn't have some of the elite physical tools, so there's some little room for error there, but he's a guy that just rides out the storm at very assignment sound. So I think as a run blocker and pass protection, Luke Fortner can do both at a high level.
All right, so we go from potentially one of the best tackles in the draft to one of the better centers in the class for day 2. Ben, take us to day 3. Who's a guy that got a really intriguing blend in terms of run game, pass game there on the 3rd day of the draft?
Well, really quick, I don't think you're breaking any news with Evan Neal as one of the better combo skill sets. But really quick, you two, Dane, Fran, what's your number one concern of Evan Neal moving on to the NFL?
For me, it's just not finishing as a run blocker. He'll fall. Not that he's not able to. It's just he falls off some of his blocks when he's trying to finish. But we're nitpicking at that point, I think.
Yeah, to me, it was just the overall hand usage, leverage at the point of attack in the run game. Just some areas that he can get a little bit better at. He's got really strong hands once he latches on, but just fell off a number of blocks a little bit too quickly. But that's an easily correctable thing when you look at the grand scheme.
I agree with both those sentiments. He falls off a ton of blocks. I think he plays too far out of his toes too far often. Rarely ever just punches and sits back, uses that huge frame to move people, but would like them to be a little bit more balanced, keep his head and shoulders out of the fight, as Jeff Satlin says. But 2 guys really quick, day 3 options for guys that have the best blend of run blocking and pass pro. 2 guys that I think are through and through guards, not a lot of positional versatility in their college careers or projecting forward. And that's Marquise Hayes out of Oklahoma and Ed Ingram at LSU. And Ed Ingram was a 4-year starter, some off the field hiccups in between there, but he's got the size, the power, the heavy hands, tight hands as well. He's got the hips to kind of uproot defenders. He's a good puller. His pass pro is very patient, square, has a lightning quick and strong inside hand, and definitely a nasty demeanor as well. And Marquise Hayes, a 3-year starter, just at left guard. A lot of similar things. A guy that can uproot in the run game, very reliable pass protector. Both love looking for work. So Marquise Hayes, Ed Ingram, they're both through and through guards. I think some of the better combo skill set offensive line prospects in the class.
Yeah, Ed Ingram, a guy that stood out down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. I thought he had a good week overall down there, but 2 guys important to prioritize here for this discussion. Let's get to the next category here. And this one just purely pass protection focused. And for me, I'll go with a tackle that, again, is going to be near the top of nearly every mock draft you read, and that's Charles Cross, the left tackle from Mississippi State. He's 6'5", 307 pounds, redshirt sophomore, only 21-year-old rookie. So this is a guy that you think his best football may be ahead of him. He's played a ton of pass pro over the last couple of years in that air raid offense with Mike Leach down there with the Bulldogs. And look, year 1, it was a little bit up and down. He gave up, according to PFF, gave up 6 sacks, 33 hurries, 5 hits in the quarterback, 44 pressures over the course of that redshirt freshman year. Got a little bit better here this season. But I think what you're looking at with Cross, number one, remember, he wasn't recruited to play in that scheme. He was recruited to play in a different scheme. And he's got kind of that glass-eating mentality that a lot of people really enjoy from the offensive line. He's got a little bit of that. So he's not necessarily a finesse player. Definitely is not passive in pass protection. He's trying to look for work every chance he can get. But I think with him, you're also just looking at the pure traits. I mean, a natural athlete, really light feet. He's got strong hands, the change of direction, all the athletic traits you're looking for. They're all there with Charles Cross. I still think, look, only 22 starts under his belt. There are things that he's got to clean up. And I think if you look purely at like the metrics in terms of the amount of production he has given up to opposing pass rushers, it's not always kind. But I think, again, you're counting on a young player whose best football could be ahead of him. I think he's a really intriguing player moving forward into the NFL. So Charles Cross, if we're talking purely pass protection, an important player to bring up here with this discussion. Dane, who would be up for you for day 2?
Well, speaking of Mike Leach, let's go up to Washington State. A player that used to play for Coach Leach, Abraham Lucas, who 4-year starter, 42 consecutive starts at right tackle, over 3,000 offensive snaps the last 4 years. Wide, massive frame, so he can engulf at the point of attack, smooth and balanced in his lateral slide. Very good body control and quickness for a player his size. He was officially 6'6", 315 at the combine. And his numbers at the combine, under 5 seconds in the 40, he had the best short shuttle, which, we know for the offensive line, short shuttle that translates more times than not. So a 4.40 short shuttle is an outstanding time for any offensive lineman, but especially for a 315 pounder, a guy that's very patient and relaxed prior to his punch. He's smart. I think he deciphers things quickly. So Abraham Lucas, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get out of the second round based off of the production that he has over his resume, what he did at the combine, and just the traits that he offers. So if we're talking just pass protection, Abraham Lucas, I think fits the bill.
Yeah, another one that has played a ton of pass pro, as you mentioned, first for Mike Leach, and then in the run and shoot that they played over the last couple of years. Really impressed me with the way he moved in Indianapolis. As you mentioned, I thought that he had a really good positional workout. Abe Lucas, 4-year starter at right tackle. Ben, who's your day 3 guy?
Yeah, Abe Lucas, a guy who I think is more of a day 3 player. So a round 2 pick would definitely surprise me, but we'll have a sandwich bet there, Dane, on that one. Day 3 option, best pass protector. The more I dug into his film after the combine, I've been really impressed with Zach Tom out of Wake Forest, who's played left tackle the last 2 years, actually played some center back in 2019. Go right to the Florida State tape. The ACC Defensive Player of the Year, Jermaine Johnson, did not have much luck on that side, had to go feast on the right tackle, but Zach Tom has that lean, high-cut frame where he almost looks like a tight end out there in shorts and a T-shirt, especially in Indianapolis. But he's got the redirect, the mirror, plays a really efficient, high-low, independent hands. He's quick out of his stance, can run the arc against speed, really aware against stunts, but he gets himself out of trouble all the time, whether it's, reacting to counter moves or maybe taking a bad step or getting a hand knocked down, knows how to replace, knows how to be athletic with his hips and his feet, just to claw and scratch late in the down. So he's a guy that's really tough to get around in pass pro. His run blocking is probably a certain flavor, probably more of a zone scheme guy that wins quick off the ball, not much of a people mover with that high cut, lean frame. But as far as just pass pro, mirroring one-on-one, he is a guy that you really have to work and string some moves to get home.
Yeah, Zach Tom, honestly, he wouldn't shock me if he snuck into the back end of day 2. I was really impressed watching. We talked about him last week here on the podcast, just coming out of Indianapolis, a guy that I was excited to get to the film on, and I was really impressed with what I saw with him.
And I know it sounds like a weird profile, center, left tackle. It's kind of strange. Reminds me a lot of J.C. Treader, who was a 4th-round pick, also has played up and down the line, played some left tackle in a pinch for the Packers, mostly a center with the Browns since moving over on free agency. But I think Zach Tom's a really interesting option that I can't fully say where I prefer to have him. So I think J.C. Treader, a versatile player like that, is a good comp.
All right, well, let's get to the best pure run blockers in this class. And again, just kind of going through who's the best in the run game. For me, I will go on day 1. Let's go with the guy that was in Dane Brugler's number. He was the number 1 pick, Dane, I believe, in the last 2 mock drafts that you've done. Ikem Ekwonu from NC State, the left tackle there for the Wolfpack. 6'4", 310 pounds. This guy is well put together, and he's just an absolute mauler. I mean, his toughness, his nastiness, they've stood out over the last 2 seasons with him on film. He's got a guard background as well. But this is a guy who was an all-state state champion wrestler, but also ran anchor for the relays for the track team. So that's the thing, is when you're talking about the run game with Ekwonu, it's not, like he's kind of a slug and pass pro. He doesn't have great feet. No, like he's got all the athletic traits you're looking for. He's just really, really good in the run game. It just has a couple of things to clean up from a technical standpoint in the pass game. But I think when you look at Ekwonu, his ability to get off the ball, blow defenders off the ball in the run game, base blocks, working in tandem with the guard, working in tandem with the tight end. Every athletic block you would ask, Ben, I know you've talked about that Clemson game and all the different ways that he was able to get guys blocked on the backside of their perimeter run schemes, all the different things that he's been asked to do. I think when you look at Ekwonu from a technical standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a mentality standpoint, hard to say that he's not the most impressive run blocker in this class.
Well, this class, I think, is easy, but Fran, is he maybe the most advanced run blocker you've studied in the last 5-10 years? Right up there with maybe the Quentin Nelsons of the world. And I'm trying to think of who else was in that conversation, the way we talked about James Daniel coming out, a couple tackles, obviously, Jedrick Wills and McGlinchey and Ramczyk were really high-level prospects as well. I have no problem saying Ike Ekwonu, the most advanced run blocker that I think I have ever studied doing the draft in my 7, 8, 9 years.
Because it's not just the mentality and the power and all that. It's also the fact that he's extremely athletic, and yes. That's the thing is like when you pair all of it together, you say, man, like hey, this guy is truly unique in the way that he can get after people.
He's savvy. He's smart. Like listening to his interview with Brandon Thorne, He plays the chess match within the game, which is a lot of the things we don't talk about in just straight hand-to-hand combat and reacting to other guys' reactions and playing the long game within the game. He is a really, really advanced prospect, both mentally and physically, Fran. I thought you hit it right on the head.
Dane, let's get to you. Who's your guy for day 2?
I went with Cole Strange from Chattanooga, the center guard. He's at his most confident when he's it's the run game. Naturally aggressive in everything that he does, but especially when he gets a chance to connect and drive defenders from their spot. Really embraces that rugged, mean blocking demeanor. Prides himself on finishing the quest on every single play. Has some athleticism to him, quickness, pad level. So, I think Cole Strange is a player that coming from the FCS level can play guard, can play center. I think from day one is going to come in and compete for a starting job. And a lot of what he does in the run game is a big reason why. So big fan of what Cole Strange offers. And that's why we're talking about him as a day 2 pick.
Yeah, to be honest, coming into the Senior Bowl, I kind of thought, okay, more of a developmental player, but just seeing the way that he was able to compete at such a high level against some of the best in the country down at the Senior Bowl, obviously followed through and had a strong combine performance as well. But what he did in Mobile really kind of gave me hope that he could be a starter earlier rather than later. So I'm glad that you brought him up. Cole Strange, really intriguing player. Ben, let's come to you for day 3.
And as you get into day 3 of this category, guys, best pure run blocker typically comes at the expense of not being a proficient pass protector, because if you were, you'd probably be a day 1 or a day 2 player. So there's some guys here that I love their run blocking, just leave a little bit to be desired going backwards. And that's Justin Schaefer at Georgia. He's a nasty offensive interior guy there for that Bulldogs team. And one of my favorite, I think, can be a Pro Bowl guard in year 1 or 2 if he goes to the right scheme. That's UCLA's Sean Ryan, who has a massive lower half and is explosive and technically sound and firm, tight hands and will move you against your will. I think if he goes to a power team and slide him in at left guard or right guard, I know he's played tackle most of his career at UCLA. Look out for Sean Ryan if he gets the right home. Reminds me a lot of a Jermaine Illumine or a Matt Filer, who both are massive offensive linemen that you probably prefer to be in confined spaces there. I think UCLA is their pro day tomorrow. Look out for Sean Ryan in his bench pressing. I know he doesn't have the length we want, but he has incredible core strength. He's proven it with his discus background, all his track stuff, his shot putting. Look out for his bench press total tomorrow at their pro day. So Sean Ryan, best pure run blocker, day 3.
The arm length will help him for sure.
No question.
All right, let's go to the best space blocker. So who's the weapon in space? And I think when you look at offensive linemen, the way they're utilized in the NFL and in college football, it's not just about, watch this guy out on a screen, but you see as a puller, we talked about it earlier with Ike Mekwonu, with how he's able to reach backside 3 techniques and kind of get guys blocked on the backside of plays. There are a lot of ways that offensive linemen can be utilized in space. Now that's going to matter more for some schemes as opposed to others, but I think it's important to just kind of categorize who are the guys that do such a great job on the move. And for day 1, if I'm not going to talk about Ekwonu, I think the other guy to talk about here in this one is easy. It's Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa. All the different things he does in that Hawkeye scheme, a lot of the perimeter runs, you see him out in the move. He's really fluid. His ability to kind of seek and destroy on a moving target is really, really impressive. I mean, he can match linebackers step for step in space, lock on and finish in space. That's what you're really looking for. And he's got that ability to do that at a high level. So I would say Tyler Linderbaum for me, the best weapon in space on day 1 along the offensive line. It's an easy one, low-hanging fruit there for me. Dane, who would be day 2 for you?
Going with Dylan Parham here from Memphis, who when you think about the list of NFL backs that he's blocked for, talk about the screen game, Darrell Henderson or Tony Pollard or Kenneth Gainwell. Just extremely quick off the ball, the mobility to get out in space. He does a really nice job as a puller, executes blocks 10 yards downfield, finds work at the second level, efficient on combinations. So, the agility, the efficiency that he plays with. And this is a former high school tight end. He goes to Memphis as more of a blocking tight end than anything. Spent some time on the defensive side where they tried to figure out what to do with him, move him back to offense. And he started double-digit games at left guard, at right tackle. So this is a guy who I think at that center guard versatility at the next level, and another day 2 player. He's in that conversation with Cole Strange, with Luke Fortner, as just a guy that has position flex, that has starting potential in the NFL, and why I think this interior class has some depth to it.
You could have gone a number of ways there. And I kind of thought you would go Parham because I know he's one of your guys. So Dylan Parham from Memphis, a player that, again, is making a little bit of a position switch there, sliding a little bit deeper inside. Interesting player to watch. Ben, who do you like here for day 3?
Well, playing in space, you can take this a number of directions, whether it's picking off guys on the second level or maybe out in the screen game. So I'm going with the second one there. Alec Lindstrom at Boston College, I think is one of the best screen blocking offensive linemen in the country. That's brother of Chris Lindstrom, Alec Lindstrom. Once he gets out into the move, he's athletic, he's quick-footed, but he's nasty too. So the second he gets his hands on a linebacker or a safety, God forbid it's a corner out there, it is almost always over. He's going to walk you off the field, but he can do it in a variety of ways, whether he needs to kind of get out there and flip his hips real fast, beat a guy to the spot, or just played under control and balanced as he's going against smaller defenders and defensive backs in space out there. So Alec Lindstrom, whether it's the big running backs in the screen game, or maybe getting Zay Flowers out in the screen game, they use those offensive linemen in space quite often. So I think he's a day 3 pick. I've heard some guys like him actually as a round 3 player. I think he's more of a 5-6. So we'll see where he lands there. But Alec Lindstrom, day 3, put him in space.
I like it. All right, well, let's get to the next category here. The meanest. Who is the best glass eater from this group? The toughest, meanest player on the block for me. Look, we've talked about a number of the talented guys for day 1 already. Let's talk with another one. And Dane, this is a guy that I believe was number 7 in your latest mock draft. That's Trevor Penning from Northern Iowa. This is a big blocker. It's just under 6'7", 330 pounds. Instant power on contact. I love the way he's able to consistently move players in the run game. He'll torque and get guys to the ground. Look, all you need to do is watch any practice session from the Senior Bowl, and you could see that this guy's got that edge that if you're into that kind of play, you're going to like Trevor Penning. This guy gets after it on each and every snap. There are all the stories out there that have been written about what he does pregame to get himself ready. He'll sit there on his phone and watch the movie Saw and just all the crazy stuff this guy does. So he's a little bit of a living legend from that standpoint, but just a really fun player to watch because of the tenacity he plays with. He's not an elite athlete. I think he tested a little bit better than I thought, certainly going to the combine. It's never really shown to be a huge issue for him at the FCS level. But this is a guy that, again, just watching him in the run game, watch him get after people in both elements of his game, just a really fun prospect to be able to study. So Trevor Penning, the guy I'm going to go with here for day 1. Dane, who are you going to go with here for day 2?
The meanest on day 2 have to go Tyler Smith from Tulsa.
Yeah.
Left tackle who might move inside to guard to kind of protect some of his issues. But this is a guy who 16 penalties last year because he likes to play so aggressive. I mean, that's just, it's kind of a double-edged sword with him. But you see a guy that generates easy power with his upper body. Talk about torque. This guy has it. He can throw rushers out of the club. The leg drive and the run game, he really embraces that bully role where he's going to finish every single play. He's got that aggressive attitude, puts his man on the ground. So again, it's something that he needs to learn how to control, that controlled aggression. He's still figuring that part out, but you want him to not dial it back too much because what he does, that aggressiveness, that meanness, that's part of what makes him an effective blocker and might make him a top 50 pick when it's all said and done. So going with Tyler Smith here.
Yeah, and he's a guy that, again, he could sneak into the back end of round 1, especially we see tackles get drafted high each and every year. That position will end up in round 1, but an important player for us to bring up here for this discussion. Ben, how about you for day 3?
There's a couple of guys out there that you see always straining and late into the whistle, trying to break the will of defenders there, right into the echo of the whistle. William Dunkel at San Diego State's got a little bit of a mean streak to him. Josh Azudu at North Carolina. He looks like he's trying to finish guys left and right. And I'm not sure he's a day 3 guy or an undrafted, but I got to mention Nevada right tackle Aaron Frost. Please put on his tape. One of the most fun finishers out there in college football. He looks to finish defenders every chance he gets.
All right, well, let's get to our player comps. And we like to bring this up whenever we can in terms of the guys that compare to players that we watch on Sundays in the NFL, guys that we've studied coming out of college in the past. And one that I've used, I'm pretty sure I've used this before on the show, Cole Strange, Dane, who you brought up a little bit earlier from Tennessee Chattanooga. He reminded me almost immediately of Wyatt Teller when Wyatt Teller was at Virginia Tech. And I think the body type is very similar. I think the play personality is similar. I think the level of athleticism is really similar. So really every single step along the way, I keep watching Cole Strange. I'm like, man, like he really does remind me of Wyatt Teller, who was an early day 3 pick by the Buffalo Bills. It didn't quite work there in Buffalo. He gets traded to Cleveland and becomes one of the best guards in the NFL. And so, we'll see what the arc of development is there for Cole Strange and how quickly he's able to catch on. But he was a guy that really kind of stood out from day one. I was like, man, the way that his body is built just kind of reminds me of Wyatt Teller coming out of Virginia Tech. So that was one that stood out to me. Ben, I'll come to you next. So who's a player comp you really kind of stands out to you when you look at players in this class?
Well, I feel like I saw this guy the second I watched his tape at Kentucky. I think he has similar play profile, size, and will have a similar career arc in moving inside. And that's Darian Kennard. Reminded me a ton of Cody Ford at Oklahoma and now with the Buffalo Bills, who is that hulking, mauling tackle that you just want to slide inside and give them a little bit more protection in a phone booth there, because they're massive, they're nasty. I just want them inside at guard. So I think Darian Kennard should go in a similar day 2 ballpark as Cody Ford, and we'll see if it works out as well.
I like it. Dane, how about you?
We talked about Trevor Penning and how he's one of the meanest guys in this draft and just how he's wired. Well, I think there's a lot of similarities there with Taylor Lewan. Coming out of Michigan, playing for the Titans, that was kind of, an athletic player, but his aggressiveness, the way he was wired, that was part of the selling point with Taylor Lewan. And Penning, maybe a little bit thicker. He's got more weight on him. But, another guy who's a pretty good athlete. But I think it's the aggressiveness that they have. That's where you draw the comparisons and say, all right, that you could see some mirror images with the way they play the game, that aggressiveness, that nasty streak, they'd like to finish. That's where the comparison comes in.
Yeah, I actually have I wrote down Andrew Whitworth when I was studying Trevor Penning. I just the way that he's built, like those thick ankles, those thick calves, he just reminds me of Andrew Whitworth in that way. But I could definitely see the Taylor Lewan comp as well. Let's see. Let's go to the next one here. Someone we're surprised isn't getting more love. So this is just overall, just looking at the class, someone that we're surprised isn't getting quite the amount of love that we would have expected. For me, I'm going to go with Jamari Sawyer from Georgia. And he's a really interesting player because he's got reps at all 5 positions. So you love that positional versatility. That's something that teams absolutely value throughout the course of the process. So this is a guy that's played all 5 positions up front on the offensive line. He's tough, plays with good technique. He's got the athleticism I think you're looking for. So again, a guy that played left tackle for the last couple of years at Georgia. He went down to the Senior Bowl, played a lot of right tackle, a lot of right guard, a lot of center. So again, showing off that versatility. For me, Jamari Sawyer, just a really interesting player. I'm surprised he's getting a little bit more love, a guy that's all SEC talent over the last couple of years. Ben, who's someone that stands out to you?
Well, it would have been Zach Tom, but I feel like we already put his kind of profile to bed here. So I'll go with Blaze Andrews out of Minnesota. Nice. Who I think is a really interesting player, has starts literally at 4 different spots, 46 games, 46 starts, first team all Big Ten this year. So he's played a lot of ball, but I feel like he's getting better and better and better each season. He's versatile. I thought he had a strong week at the Shrine. Thought he looked decent out in Indianapolis and his workouts on and off the field from what I'm hearing. He's a guy that's a perfect kind of day 3 body that you want filling out your offensive line room. Maybe not the sexiest, maybe not a guy that's flirting with the day 2 conversation, but a really reliable high floor type of player that we don't typically love at draft time, but we want them to perform in week 3 when they're starting at right tackle in a pinch, So one of these guys, pay attention to the people you want to fill out your room with depth. I think Blaze Andrews is going to be a really good pro.
It's funny you brought him up because watching him, I was like, he just looks like and feels like and sounds like a Green Bay Packers offensive lineman. Like he's gonna get picked in day 3, and he's gonna start 37 games for the next 5 years. Like that's just
a Royce Newman comp is kind of appropriate as well.
No doubt.
Who ended up in Green Bay on day 3 last year, similar type of player. Yep, that's a great call.
Dane, how about you?
Well, I was gonna say Sawyer, but I think you hit it nail on the head. To me, he snuck into my top 50. I think he's that type of player. But I agree. I feel very alone in that thinking. And then I was gonna say Zach Tom, but no, I think you're right, Ben. We did touch on him quite a bit. So I'm gonna move to Cam Jurgens from Nebraska, who is a tight end in high school. Never played a snap at center in his life until his redshirt freshman year. So been playing the position for 3 years. The way he moves is just, it's different than most centers. Moves well laterally. He's blocking 40 yards down the field, very efficient on combinations, the knee bend, the punch quickness. Now things break down and doesn't have necessarily the physical traits to overcome them. So he has to be perfect in everything that he does, or it's going to be a quick rep for him. But guys that are really athletic and have the play personality that he does, you want to develop those guys. I mean, I think he's the day 3 version of Tyler Linderbaum in a lot of ways. So Cam Jurgens is a player that, probably doesn't go in the first 3 rounds, but once you get to day 3, if you're looking for a center to develop with his traits, I think Jurgens makes sense.
I'd be willing to bet that he goes day 2. I just feel like, especially with what he looked like in Indy, I think that there are enough people that like Cam Jurgens that he could end up in the second day. But it'll be interesting because of that size, the relative lack of experience. I think that's something to keep an eye on there with where he goes in this draft. Let's go with, you talk about day 3. Day 3, or maybe an undrafted free agent, kind of a sleeper to watch. And Ben, you talked about Alec Lindstrom earlier. I wanted to bring him up there because this is a guy that has played in 2 very different systems over the course of his career at Boston College as a 4-year starter. You mentioned about his brother, Chris, a former first-round pick from the Atlanta Falcons, has turned into a solid starter down there in Atlanta. I think when you look at Lindstrom, at 6'3", 296 pounds, a little bit undersized, but this guy's been calling protections at BC for the last couple of years. Again, playing more of a power system earlier on under Steve Addazio, then converted to more zone and stretch schemes over the last couple of years. And you see his ability to be effective in both systems. He's a good pass protector. He's tough. There's just a lot to like there. And he just looks like a starting offensive lineman. Now, Alec Lindstrom is a guy I would watch for later in the draft. As you mentioned earlier, Ben, I wanted to make sure I followed up. I really liked Alec Lindstrom. Who's the guy for you, Ben, that kind of stands out as a potential sleeper to watch for down the road?
Well, Dane kind of mentioned it earlier that he liked the center class, and I agree. I think it's really intriguing. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys. I have no idea what the NFL wants out of these players. There's a lot of guys that I thought were locks to show up to show up to Indianapolis in the combine, weren't invited. So I don't know if that was just at the expense that it was deep in the tackle spot or more of the hybrid guard tackle guys. There's a handful of centers that I just loved watching. I think have ability to maybe be starters, but definitely fill out an offensive line room, whether that's Brock Hoffman at Virginia Tech or James Empey at BYU. Tons of great tape between those two. How about Michael Manetti from Missouri, who came over from Rutgers? This guy's a 4 or 5 year starter, nearly 3,000 snaps played. Or Jack Wallenball from Duke, came over from Ohio State, had some injury in 2020. His buzz fell off a cliff. He's a really good player with a lot of experience. So I feel like there's players like this all over college football, whether it's Doug Kramer at Illinois or Colin Newell at Iowa State. There's a lot of experienced players out there that have good tape and are versatile. I just can't figure out what the NFL really wants out of these players. And then you realize in November, December, there's offensive line rooms that are depleted and they're signing guys off the street. And it's these types that come in and play. So I want to get ahead of the curve and figure out, where will these guys get drafted? Who's willing to take them? Are they priority free agents? Because they're going to play in the league. Just a matter of what type of capital will it take to get there.
I love it. Dane, who do you like here for yours?
Yeah, and I'd throw Nick Ford in there from Utah as well as a combine snub who, just this center class kind of stretches, especially those later rounds. I'm going to go with Braxton Jones. Speaking of a guy that was at the Senior Bowl out of Southern Utah. I think when you look at it, he needs work. He needs to improve his timing. He needs to improve his technique. His anchor isn't really NFL ready, but you've got a guy with size, with movement skills, with length. Those are foundational traits. Those are the things that I want to bet on, and I'm going to coach up the rest. So yes, there's going to be an adjustment period for Braxton Jones. You're not going to throw him out there day 1. But on day 3, that's not really what you're looking for. I think you're looking for guys that you can bring along, and maybe down the road you will have a starter, a guy that you will look to sign to a second contract. And I think Braxton Jones could be that guy somewhere on day 3.
Without question, got traits to be able to develop. I think we saw that over the course of his career. Guys, we obviously covered a lot of players, and there are a lot of players to cover with this offensive line group, considering we're looking at every position up front. So with that said, I kind of kept track of who we talked about, and there were a few names that were pretty big ones that we didn't hit on. So real quickly, before we moved on the clock, Dane, I'm going to come to you for Bernard Raymond, a guy that I know you're really, really high on from Central Michigan. Ben, I'll let you choose Zion Johnson or Kenyon Green, 2 of the bigger name offensive linemen that we didn't hit on. I'll let you go, but Dane, I'll come to you first. Bernard Raymond, sell the listeners here on Raymond and what he can bring to the table.
the Austrian wide receiver turned left tackle, who is maybe, the traits don't necessarily jump off. He's not the longest guy. I thought he'd test better than he did at the combine, but the way he plays, fluid, he's balanced. I really like his reactionary skills. That's where I think really stands out to me. And for a guy that made a transition from tight end to left tackle during a pandemic, his awareness is really impressive for a guy that has such meager experience at the position. So I think he's a guy that's going to compete for immediate starting reps in year one as a rookie. I think he's got tackle guard versatility. There's just a lot of things to like with that natural center of gravity, the ability to mirror and counter. So I'm a big Raymond fan.
Dane, good stuff there on Raymond. Ben, I'll come to you. Do you want to do Zion or do you want to do Kenyon Green?
I'll take Zion there. And, he's a guy I have a second round grade on. I compare him to former Giants Kevin Booth. It may not excite you, but this guy played a lot of good ball on Super Bowl teams. Zion's an excellent mover off the ball. He wins with positioning. He wins with sealing. He wins with beating guys to the spot. Perfect for his own scheme. Not really a powerful presence. He's not going to maul you and move you off the ball a whole lot, but wins with being quick-footed and getting himself in a proper position, can pull, can work on the second level, can get out in space in the screen game, very athletic and light-footed, played some left tackle. I like him a little bit better at guard as well. Came over from Davidson, which isn't the most common football factory, but he played some really good football in the ACC at Boston College. Really interesting player. I thought had one of the best weeks down in Mobile at center, which gave you another kind of idea and projection of where else he could help out there. So Zion Johnson, a guy I think's a little bit more fit for his zone scheme. Kenyon Green, Fran, maybe a little bit of the opposite wide.
Yeah, I think when you look at Kenyon Green, it's 6'4", over 320 pounds. He's got over 34-inch long arms. He's got 10.5-inch hands. This is a big guard. Now, he started games at all four spots outside of center, 4 of the 5 spots up front along the offensive line just in 2021. So showed off that ability to be versatile. He was the left guard last year full-time. He was the right guard the year before that. So he has started all over the place up front for the Aggies. He was a 5-star recruit, top 5 offensive tackle prospect. Coming out of the Houston area. And I think when you look at Kenyon Green, it comes down to the size. He's got some pretty good power. He's really fast out of his stance. And he's got the ability to overwhelm people in the run game. I think he's got some things he's got to clean up with his hands, both in the run game and pass game. But I think you're talking about a guy with versatility, toughness, and play speed and size. That's again, you're checking boxes there in terms of some of those core traits you're looking for. So Kenyon Green, a really, really impressive player, Ben.
There's some people in the NFL that think he's on a path to being an Elton Jenkins type of player. Well, I think the Packers really, lucked out, but really, struck gold with his versatility since being a day 2 player. So I think Kenyon's going to be similar ballpark. Does he have that same versatility at the next level as well? Because he certainly proved it on Saturdays.
We covered a ton of players real quick. 3 other guys from the Big Ten that I'll just buzz on real quickly. Rasheed Walker from Penn State, left tackle, traits, toughness, things you really like there with Rasheed Walker the last couple of years at Penn State. Daniel Fa'alele, 6'8", almost 400 pounds, just a behemoth from Australia, new to football, has only been playing for 3 years, didn't play at all in 2020 due to the pandemic. So just hasn't played a ton, but you're betting on the come there with Daniel Fa'alele. And then Nicholas Petit-Frere from Ohio State, former top recruit, has played a couple different positions there for the Buckeyes, has athletic traits, hasn't quite put it all together. And so you might be getting a little bit better of a player in the NFL than what you've seen so far in college. So I just want to make sure we mention those guys as well before we got out of here. Guys, let's go to the next segment. One of my favorite exercises we do here every single week here on the show. It's time to go on the clock.
On the clock.
All right, guys, it's time now to go on the clock. And again, just as a quick reminder for people that maybe are listening for the first time, in this segment here in the offseason, what we do is we got to go to this randomizer on the internet and we plug in all 32 teams, every position, every part of the draft, and we just allow them to kind of spit out a different situation for each of the 3 of us. So, Ben, this week I sent you the email on Friday, so you had a couple days to kind of stew on this. You get a pass rusher for the New York Giants in round 1. Now, they've got 2 picks inside the top 7, I believe. So you can decide if you want this to be for the 5th pick or the 7th pick. I'll let you choose. But either way, this is a position a lot of people are connecting to the Giants. I'm interested to kind of get your thoughts, knowing what we know about Joe Shane, the general manager, as well as the new defensive scheme there with Wink Martindale coming in as the defensive coordinator. What are your thoughts on the pass rushers that fit best? Where do you think they'll end up going there at the top of the draft?
Well, my initial thought is if you think I'm opening your email on a Friday, another thing coming, opened it 30 seconds ago. Just kidding. But we're going to go with the 5th overall here. You just mentioned you set it up, new head coach, new defensive coordinator, new GM, coming over from Buffalo. So I took a little peek at their draft history out in Buffalo the past few years. This Giants team is going to be a 4-3 type of scheme, need a heavy defensive end, one that can stop the run effectively on first down as well. So I don't want a finessey, quarterback hunter with a top 10 capital. That we need some core base players here. I went back and actually watched some Jerry Hughes film this morning just to get an idea what one of their mainstay defensive ends looked like. He set one of the most violent edges in the NFL I had ever seen. He is a very underrated run defender. So just looking here, I think we're going to be in the ballpark of Carl Laftis and Thibodeau and David Ajabo and Jermaine Johnson. I think the trajectory and everything we're looking for this organization and looking for a 3-down player and everything about this stock is heading to this landing area of the draft. I'm going to go with Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State with the 5th overall pick here, who I think is an outstanding early down run defender, not only shooting gaps and winning up the field vertically, but can hold the edge as violently as anybody in this class. Yes, anybody in this class. Aiden Hutchinson included. Jermaine Johnson has a variety of ways to get after the passer. Showed that this year, ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Showed up to Mobile and just whooped the who's who of offensive linemen down there at the Senior Bowl in the first 2 days of practice. I think Jermaine Johnson is a heck of a football player and a real core cornerstone piece for this Giants front seven that I think is in a huge kind of transitional phase. So we need someone that can play every down. I think Jermaine Johnson is more than warranted of the 5th overall pick.
I kind of think back to a couple of years ago in Baltimore where the way Wink Martindale used like Matt Judon. And I feel like you can kind of use him in some of those ways where you see that first step, you see that length off the ball, the flexibility to be able to use all the different stunt packages and the different blitz packages that Baltimore used back in the day. In those days under Martindale, I kind of like that fit. Jermaine Johnson there makes a lot of sense.
And really quick, Fran, just reflecting on our current roster, we didn't talk about that. We spent 2nd round capital on Azeez Ojulari last year.
Yep.
So I think looking for that right complement on the other side, Ojulari is a little bit more of the vertical high side rusher, a little light in the pants. I want a 260, 270-pound defensive end on the other side. So I think Jermaine Johnson would be a great fit to complement what we already have.
I love it. That makes a lot of sense. Well, for me, guys, I got tasked with cornerback, so corners for the Colts on day 2. And obviously the Colts reportedly making a trade. So they've got a couple extra day 2 picks to be able to work with. And day 2 could mean either round 2 or round 3. So they also have a new defensive coordinator going in. Gus Bradley making his way over from the Las Vegas Raiders. They played more cover 3 than anybody in the NFL last year. And typically they've worked with a lot of zone corners. So you're looking for size, length, instincts, ball skills, toughness, speed and athleticism, not as big of a priority for guys in this scheme. And so, when you look at the Colts and the way that they've operated under Chris Ballard over recent years, heavy trend towards the senior class. They trend a little bit older overall. They're not afraid of guys from smaller schools. Lack of experience is okay. They prioritize football character above all else. So really what I did was I took all these kind of factors and kind of spit out, all right, who are 3 names that make sense for day 2 of this draft? And I think with all 3 of these players, I'm looking more towards round 3 as opposed to round 2, but I'm interested to kind of get your guys' thoughts. I'm thinking more round 3 for these 3 guys that I'm going to bring up. First one would be Martin Emerson from Mississippi State. And I think when you look at Emerson, one of the bigger corners in this draft, and what's always stood out to me with him is his feel in playing in zone coverage, his ability to finish on the ball. So this is a guy that I think would be a great fit in that scheme. He definitely has the body type that they look for. All these corners that I'm going to list, they all have 32-inch plus long arms. And that was always kind of the benchmark of those guys in the Seattle days where Gus Bradley obviously comes from with Pete Carroll. So Martin Emerson from Mississippi State, that was one that stood out to me. Caleb Evans from Missouri. Only 1 year at Missouri. He was at Tulsa the previous part of his career. I think when you look at Caleb Evans, he's a little bit more wiry than Emerson. But I think that when you look at his overall skill set, good zone corner, the ability to take the football away, competitive downhill, really physical. That really fit for me. And then Cam Taylor-Britt, he's a little bit more undersized. His arms are a little bit below that 32-inch benchmark. But I think when you look at his play style and his physicality, I think he also would make a lot of sense. I think when all said and done, I would probably going to go Emerson there, but I'm interested to kind of get your thoughts of the three who you guys think might be the better fit there in that kind of system. Dane, do you kind of lean one way or the other?
I think that when you look at the Colts and knowing how much Chris Ballard loves guys that can get you the football, create turnovers.
Yeah. Yep.
Emerson and Evans, they combined for 2 interceptions in their careers. They both only had 1. And that's why I'd kind of lead towards Britt in that scenario, because I wouldn't call him necessarily a ball hawk or anything, but he's a former, offensive guy in high school. And when the ball's up in the air, he will go and get it. So for that reason, I would lean towards Britt in that scenario.
He's got that thick build that Rocky Sin had coming out of Temple, and Rocky Sin, a second-round pick out of Temple, obviously went to the Colts. So, yeah, it was a tough one. Just kind of going through the body types, it kind of narrowed down my focus. But again, that's the point of this exercise is to look at what teams and schemes all look like or look for when they're kind of stacking the board here at all these positions. With that in mind, let's stay in the secondary here, Dane. As we come to you, you drew the Minnesota Vikings here this week, another team breaking in a new system here on the defensive side of the football. You got the safety spot for late in the draft, late day 3. So we'll say, rounds 5 through 7. I'm just to kind of get your thoughts on where your mind went here with the Vikings on late day 3.
Yeah, like you mentioned, we've got a new regime here in Minnesota. So there's some unknown with a first-year head coach, Kevin O'Connell, obviously an offensive guy, and then a first-year general manager with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. So we don't know a ton about, their tends and, their tendencies and, where they might go. But what we do know, Adofo-Mensah, he was Andrew Berry's right-hand man in Cleveland. So you can bet that a lot of their key principles as they look towards the draft, you can bet they align pretty closely. So things like age, big conference performers, especially in the early rounds, athletic traits. So if we're looking at safety in the later rounds, a guy that I think stands out, I was Dane Belton. I think he hit a lot of those parameters, just turned 21 years old, led the Hawkeyes in passes defended, led the team in interceptions last year, tested really well at the combine, 4.43 in the 40-yard dash, and he's got decent tape. I think he played a lot of that cash position in that defense that they run. I think he also showed off his range, can play in the box, can play a little bit more in the slot. So you look at the Vikings, Ed Donatell, now the defensive coordinator, Mike Pettin's also on that staff, 2 guys that I think prioritize aggressiveness at safety. So based on the coaching staff, based on Adofo-Mensah and, what they might be looking for in his first draft, I think Dane Belton would be a nice fit.
Yeah, I think he checks the box from a profile standpoint, as you mentioned, with the youth and things of that nature. So I like that one, Dane. There, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure the first name had nothing to do with it. That's where you went first.
Hey, us Dane B's got to stick together.
Right, exactly. Well, guys, good stuff. This is always a fun exercise. We'll do it every single week. Next week, the 3 of us are breaking down the running back class. So we'll be doing that next week here, the Tuesday episode, breaking down all the running backs here in the 2022 NFL Draft. We'll see you next week right here on the Journey to the Draft podcast presented by Life Brand.
Now it's time to hear from you, the fans, in the Draft Mailbag.
All right, good stuff there from Ben and Dane. Let's now transition to Draft Mailbag, where, again, the best way to reach us, the best way to get your question answered here on the show is to head on over to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, leave us a rating, leave us your question there in the comment box, and we will answer it. And if you've got a mock draft, which we've got one of those today, we will break it down on an upcoming episode. Let's start things off with T. Carabarni, who left a 5-star review saying, "Hi, Fran, love the show and your analysis. Question on the linebacker class in this draft. How big of a drop-off is there between Nakobe Dean and Devin Lloyd, who that's a linebacker from Georgia and a linebacker from Utah, and the round 2 or 3 guys like Georgia's Quay Walker, LSU's Damone Clark, Wyoming's Chad Muma, and Wisconsin's Leo Chenal? Is the value still there on day 2, or are Nakobe Dean and Devin Lloyd head and shoulders above the rest?" So, T, I would say the big thing, and remember, it's very similar to what we talked about in the last segment and on the clock. Every team is going to look at all of these linebackers a little bit differently. My guess is the teams aren't going to look at Leo Chenal, who's a big, hulking, 6'3", 245-pound thumper for Wisconsin. Who's a really good blitzer, and he's a downhill on-the-ball player. You're not going to look at him the same way you would look at Damone Clark from LSU, who is 6'4", 220, run and chase, highly athletic, sideline-to-sideline player, right? Not only would they play different positions, but they'll also likely be different scheme fits when you get to the NFL, when you look at their skill sets. So every team is going to look at this group a little bit differently, and it's going to really kind of cater to what scheme you run, who's already on your team, all of those things. But what I would say is from an overall talent standpoint, I think that this group is pretty tight-knit together. Now, you can get into some trouble when you get into that line of thinking, though, right? Where you could say, all right, we're going to pass on a guy here at 20th overall or at 22nd overall because we really like the player that could be available at 52. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. So I think that you always want to try and go by, just follow your board, follow what's going to make sense for you, big picture in the draft. But I would say that when you look at this group, and I've said this before, this group of linebackers is really, really strong. And this goes to back to in the summer, throughout the course of the season, going out of the Senior Bowl, I thought it was a really good group. Going to the Combine, I thought that was one of the best individual workouts. I said that here on last week's show. So this linebacker group, really, really strong. I think there's talent at the top. I think when you get to day 2, some really good talent. And then or even early day 3, I think there's going to be some really, really intriguing options for teams when you get to that part of the draft. So good question there from T. Caraborni to start things off. Thanks so much for leaving that 5-star review. Let's get to the next one here. Pete Nathan left a 5-star review saying, "Yo, Fran, it's Pete from San Jose, California. Been listening to this podcast for a long time, and I want to know what your thoughts are on Georgia's defensive line, Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, and Trayvon Walker, and how they compare to Clemson's 2019 defensive line from that draft, Clelin Ferrell, Dexter Lawrence, and Christian Wilkins. Who's going to be good in the NFL when it really matters? Because we know all 3 of them are going to get drafted in the first round. Who is your most favorite and least favorite out of these players?" That's a really fascinating question, Pete. And I think when you look, obviously this Georgia front is really, really impressive. That Clemson front back in the 19 draft was really impressive. It was a little bit surprising that Clelin Ferrell went as high as he did. He was a surprise 4th overall selection. I would think that there's enough buzz out there at this point that Trayvon Walker, it seems, would be the high pick of this group. That said, what if a team fell in love with Jordan Davis, right? And what if he snuck in at 7 or at 6 or at 8, and then Trayvon Walker went in the early teens? I wouldn't say that has a 0% chance of happening either. So, maybe we do see that surprise. I would say if you're going to kind of compare these guys, I almost want to lump them in. You say, okay, compare Christian Wilkins to Devontae Wyatt, compare Jordan Davis to Dexter Lawrence, and compare Trayvon Walker to Clelin Ferrell. I think Walker is just a little bit more physically gifted. He's bigger, stronger, faster, more powerful. He's just not as technically advanced as Clelin Ferrell was. I think both of them bring the intangible qualities that you're looking for in terms of the off-field character, the toughness, at least from what I've heard about both players. Obviously that was a really big thing for Clelin Ferrell coming out, and from what I understand, that's a big thing for Trayvon Walker as well. I think he's just got more physical gifts at his disposal than Ferrell did. I think when you look at the comparison between Dexter Lawrence and Jordan Davis, I think Davis has just been more dominant and more disruptive in terms of his power and his ability to really kind of push the pocket. I think Lawrence played more often in that defense. I think that Jordan Davis, they take him off the field a little bit more. But you got to keep in mind, Georgia's defensive line depth has been outstanding. I mean, we're talking about all these players here that are going to go likely in the first round. Well, they've got a guy in Jalen Carter who has a chance to go higher than all 3 of them in next year's draft, right? Or the year after, whenever he decides to come out. So I think when you look at this Georgia defense, we talk about Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt and rotations and snap count percentage and all that. You have to keep in mind that they have a lot of really talented players. And when they like to get to their sub, it's not just about defensive tackles. Trayvon Walker would kick inside and another defensive end would come on the field, right? So when it comes to those defensive tackles, that's one thing to keep in mind there when you're talking about the snap counts for those guys. But Jordan Davis, probably a little bit of the edge over Dexter Lawrence. And then you get to Christian Wilkins versus Devontae Wyatt. I think that Wilkins probably gets a little bit of the edge there. He was more of your prototype 3 technique. I think he could do a little bit more of the 1, whereas I think when you look at Devontae Wyatt, he's been used more as like a point of attack, kind of a nose guard type of player, but he has that ability to be that interior disruptor as well. And so Wilkins has been solid in the league. I would say probably not lived up to the draft slot that I expected, or certainly that the Dolphins expected. He's been a solid player for them and a key cog of what they've done up front. It's been a really good defense over the last couple of years, and I do think that's kind of what Wyatt can be. I think that he can be that solid presence up front. He has not been a big-time playmaker for Georgia over the course of his career. That hasn't been his bread and butter, but just a rock-solid player. But Pete, that's a really good question, kind of a fun exercise to compare one of the better defensive lines coming out of the draft in the last few years, kind of comparing those 2 groups together. was really fun to do. Let's go to the next one here. Captain Nonsen left a 5-star review saying, this podcast has such a knowledgeable group of guests and hosts on the show. Even though I'm not an Eagles fan, it is still a must listen for me. So Captain, thanks so much for that. Here's the question here. For the 2022 draft, who do you think is the most NFL ready wide receiver? So this is always a tough one. And the reason why it's tough is for us on the outside, one of the things that makes a guy pro ready isn't necessarily what he puts on film. It is the things that he does away from the field during the week of practice, during the week of preparation, how he composes himself, how he prepares. So all of that, I would say, is that's going to be the bigger element, the bigger factor to kind of take into consideration when you're talking about who is pro ready. That said, with that aside, knowing that from what we could see on the film, I would say if you look at Chris Olave and the way that he plays the game, he is so sudden off the line of scrimmage to defeat press coverage. He is a really good college route runner. He knows how to attack leverage. He can sink his hips and get in and out of breaks really, really well. He knows how to work blind spots as a route runner, snaps breaks off really, really well. And then when you pair that with sub 4.4 speed and that ability to create down the field, I mean, that's a guy that you feel like has a translatable skill set to the NFL. I could make an argument, though, for Jahan Dotson, who rarely puts the football on the ground and also runs pretty sharp routes. I could make an argument for Treylon Burks at his size and say, okay, you could plug him in, and while teams may use him a little bit differently and do different things, you say, like, this guy can step in and he's not going to look out of place right away in the NFL. Jameson Williams with his speed, like, he's not going to look out of place in the NFL. And so John Mechie, how rock solid he is across the board. The first name that popped in my mind was Olave, but it's a good question. But for me, I hate to couch it, but I think it's so important to remember how much the off-field, the intangibles aspect of it makes a guy, quote-unquote, pro-ready for someone that is not. And that often is the case when you see guys coming out of college that don't make it. It's because of that element of their profile, of their skill set. Last question here. H-Buy left a 5-star review with a mock draft saying how much they love the show, love hearing about players a full year before they become stars in the NFL. I put together an Eagles-only mock draft on the simulator from the Draft Network. Would love your thoughts. I did trade back at 19 for another 2 and another 3. So a bunch of players here in this mock draft. I'm going to do what I always do, and just going to kind of break it up into chunks. Day 1, the 2 players were Andrew Booth, the corner from Clemson, and George Karlaftis, the pass rusher from Purdue. So here are the 2 picks there from H-Buy. Andrew Booth, big-time need, best available player. George Karlaftis, big-time need, also a big-time player. Yeah, I think when you look at Booth and Karlaftis, we've talked about both these guys. Booth, I think, is one of the more physically gifted corners in this draft, kind of sliding under the radar a little bit right now because he didn't work out at the combine, so he's not on the front of everybody's mind when we talk about this cornerback class. But when you talk about a guy with size, speed, quickness, physicality, ball skills, competitiveness, all the things you're looking for a corner, Andrew Booth has that. So a really intriguing talent there on the corner. And then George Karlaftis, this is a guy that's powerful, can push the pocket, highly competitive, great motor, good run defender, did it from day one at Purdue, was one of the best players in the conference as a true freshman. So I think when you look at Karlaftis, there's a lot to like there. Let's get to day 2. Handful of picks here on the second day of the draft. 2 in round 2, 2 in round 3. Daniel Faalele, the right tackle from Minnesota. We talked about him earlier with Ben and Dane. Everyone in this mock draft keeps giving the Eagles interior offensive linemen, which I think we're loaded at. I would say tackle more of a need. And I think when you look at Faalele, really intriguing skill set at that size, again, 6'8", just under 400 pounds. He can move people. He can absolutely engulf and swallow guys up in the run game, pass protection. He's just tough to get around, even though things aren't perfect right now from a technical standpoint, and he's not a supreme athlete. He's not the athlete that Jordan Mailata is. But I think when you look at his size and his ability to just completely overwhelm defenders, there's a lot to like there with Daniel Faalele. Round 2 as well, Christian Watson, the wide receiver from North Dakota State. Here was what H-Buy had to say about Watson. He said, looking for a guy opposite Devontae Smith, he happened to be exactly what we need. And I think when you look at Watson, this is a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", 200 pounds. He runs really well. He ran sub 4.4 at the combine, but that shows up on film. I mean, when you look at the yards after catch, he was an All-American kick returner. I mean, this guy's got legitimate juice. He could snap off breaks. He had some issues. He had some drops here and there over the course of his career, but from a height, weight, speed standpoint, one of the more impressive receivers in this draft. In round 3, 2 players here, both from the SEC. Darian Kendrick, the corner from Georgia. Damone Clark, the linebacker from LSU. Here's the blurb for Kendrick. Don't know how he's still there, but would love to take him if he was. Damone Clark, insane amount of need for an upgrade at linebacker, and Clark fits what Gannon likes. I think when you look at Kendrick, he's scheme diverse. He's athletic. He can play the ball. former wide receiver. He's a big-time wide receiver recruit coming out of college. He actually played receiver early in his career with Clemson. Moved over to defensive back, still was trying to figure it out, ended up playing really well, was an all-conference player in the ACC, ran into some trouble off the field, ended up transferring, ends up at Georgia, was part of that national championship defense here this past season as a senior. So Kendrick, an intriguing blend of both size, athleticism, and skill at that spot. You think that his best football could be ahead of him because he's only been playing corner full-time for a couple of seasons. Damone Clark, this is a guy who's only been a 2-year starter. High level athlete, insane explosiveness. His ability to play sideline to sideline is really, really impressive. I thought his instincts got better this year as a senior compared to his junior season, but a really, really fun player. Now on day 3, I'm going to go through all the picks and then I'll, from what H-By wrote down, then I'll kind of buzz through with some highlights here. Round 4, Sam Williams, pass rusher from Ole Miss. Great talent. Not sure the Eagles would draft a guy with his baggage, but in the 4th round, why not? Round 5, safety Sterling Weatherford from Miami, Ohio. I honestly can't see the Eagles not signing or re-signing at least 2 safeties in free agency, which is why I only drafted 1 in this mock draft. Round 6, Brandon Smith, linebacker, Penn State. Again, the need for a speedy linebacker who can also really blitz. Round 6 as well, Justin Ross, wide receiver from Clemson. I'm guessing he goes this low because of his neck, but if he's there, how do we not pick him? Round 7, Cole Turner, tight end, Nevada. Have to find a guy behind Dallas Goedert, and Cole Turner can really catch the football. And then lastly, round 7, Noah Ellis, nose tackle from Idaho. Massive man, the type we don't really have on the roster at the moment. So, H-By, the things that stand out to me, number 1, you mentioned Sterling Weatherford. Keep in mind, he's getting looked at a little bit at linebacker as well. He practiced at linebacker during the week of the Senior Bowl at that position. He did some DB workouts at his pro day. He was the first pro day after the combine. He did some DB workouts, some linebacker workouts. So just kind of keep in mind there. Some people may be looking at him as a position switch player moving forward to the NFL. Brandon Smith, high athletic ceiling. You love what he can do in space. He's kind of similar to Davion Taylor. Played that similar kind of role in that Penn State defense for much of his career. He's been playing football a little bit longer, but played that similar kind of role, almost as an overhang, kind of a slot corner, a big slot there in that defense. Justin Ross, yeah, like you mentioned, the medical is going to be a huge part of where he gets drafted. Does he go on day 2? Does he go that high if teams are good with it? We'll find out here as reports come out after the medical check at the combine, or does he fall into the latter stages of this draft? So H-By, good stuff there. Really appreciate the thorough mock draft. Thanks so much to all of you out there for your continued support of this show and all the rest of our podcasts here with Eagles Entertainment. Like I said earlier with Ben and Dane, we've got our running back preview. We're going to do that next week right here on the Journey to the Draft podcast. But stay tuned, because this week we've got the debut of the one and only Greg Cosell. He is back for Pick 6 later this week right here on the Journey to the Draft podcast presented by Life Brand.